You saw the possibility of being corrupt.
Not much of a change, only the time.
What is your point?
Racist. Haters.
Yes, it basically.
People of Bacolod and Negros Occidental, welcome to iDebate Challenge 2007. Our topic for tonight is very timely considering the recent approval or signing into law of the Human Security Act or the anti-terror law of the Philippines now. And we'll be talking about the issue of whether we have to look at terrorism with an absolutist point of view, or we have to look at it with a relative point of view. Or is terrorism just like beauty, where it really depends on the eye of the beholder, that in the point of view of another person, a person may be a terrorist, but in the point of view of another person, he could be a freedom fighter.
If I was a true freedom fighter, would I kill a non-combatant?
If it is ideologically driven, yes.
Does a true freedom fighter kill non-combatants?
It really depends.
Depends on what?
On the motive.
On the motive. You said a while ago ideological.
Yes.
So does ideology decide who lives and dies?
Depending on which ideology.
Are you aware that these ambiguous freedom fighters, as they call themselves, use violence, force, and terror to promote their ends?
Who doesn't in the war of these days?
Is it a yes or a no?
Yes, they use violence.
Do you believe that these ambiguous freedom fighters we are debating right now are not morally justified in using violence in the name of their freedom?
They are justified. Say, for example, Islam. The sixth pillar of Islam commands them to wage jihad or holy war. It requires each Muslim to take up arms against an aggressor. Then how does that contradict the Muslims? Give me an example.
My question about to you was this one. Do you believe in the moral principle that the end does not justify the means? On question number 3, you contradicted that. You said they are morally justified.
I'm asking you how.
You can't ask me the question. I'm supposed to be the one asking you the question.
Okay. Do you condemn terrorism?
As in condemn, what do you mean?
You denounce terrorism in all aspects. Then you, as you stated, denounce the killing of civilians.
Of course, I'm not a terrorist. I don't kill people. I certainly don't want to kill people.
Okay.
Then in my own right, I can claim myself a freedom fighter even if I'm not part of Hezbollah, Al-Qaeda, IRA.
Yes, but I can call you a terrorist. Hence, one man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist.
Okay. Then why do these groups use the term freedom fighter?
Because
why do they call
themselves? What they
themselves?
believe in.
Because
they believe in what they are fighting
What
for.
kind of organization would call themselves terrorists? Come on.
Isn't there a Webster definition of terrorism?
Of course. Yes.
Is this a new word that we cannot actually agree on how to define it? Or has this word existed from, let's say, long before?
Yes, from 1795.
That's correct. Of course. I'd like to state too that while the word terrorist and terrorism appear in Webster's dictionary, I'd like to state that freedom fighter, the term does not appear. Freedom appears. Fighter appears. Militant, insurgent, things you've said appear. But freedom fighter? No.
Okay, freedom and fighter, you combine those two words. Don't we combine a lot of words? In 1945, the US dropped 2 bombs on Japan.
That was a terrorist act. I'm not defending anyone. I'm just saying.
So you're saying that it is a terrorist?
Anyone can be a terrorist anytime.
I'm asking you, you said anyone can be a terrorist anytime?
I can be a terrorist.
Then I can be a freedom fighter.
Of course. That's why it's a
One man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. Don't you agree, Mr. Speaker?
No, because
Why?
terrorist is defined by the acts. I can be a terrorist if I fall into those acts. I can bomb this place. I can be a terrorist. Okay. But you cannot call someone freedom fighter. Who is what? What can you term Rizal?
A freedom fighter.
No, he was a propagandist.
So you're calling him a terrorist?
No, he's a propagandist, not a freedom fighter.
He was a filibuster according to the Spanish colonial government.
A filibuster is a rebel. In English means rebel. Rebel does not
No.
mean terrorism.
Rebel
Let
is
me-
synonymous.
According to
terrorist.
Webster's dictionary, the etymology of
That is just Spanish propaganda. And you know that those are lies.
Why did the UN sanction a war on terrorism when terrorism is the instilling of fear or violence as a means of coercion? They sanctified the war on terrorism. They agreed with it.
Earlier you said they were against the war. Now you say they're
No, I'm saying
sanctifying terrorism.
they
I mean,
agreed
they're
with the
against
war.
terrorism. Now you're saying that they're sanctifying terrorism.
So what do you call the
You're
war on
contradicting
terrorism?
yourself.
What are you calling?
So tell me, Mr. Speaker, what did the United Nations do to prevent the war on terror?
They're doing all they can. Of course.
They're doing
By-
a war
by-
on terror.
They're
The one-
doing
one-
all they can.
Yes, and one example would be defining terrorism,
So-
which you cannot accept.
But the UN itself are sending troops to Iraq to kill innocent civilians.
That is not true.
Okay, they're there to kill the terrorists.
They were
but
there.
They kill
They were
innocent
there
civilians.
in order to disarm the weapons of mass destruction.
Did they find any weapons of mass destruction, Mr. Speaker?
But that was
no,
there.
they did
They
not.
didn't come
The
there.
UN resolution asked Iraq if they could see these weapons of mass destruction. But since Iraq said no,
So they waged a
course.
war on Iraq, and they did not find any single piece of
They were
nuclear
not there.
hardware.
Question.
They were not there to kill innocent civilians.
Yes.
They were not there to rape women. They were not there to behead children.
When
They were
s-
not there to bomb cities. They were not there to plant chemical weapons.
When somebody wages
They
a
were
war
not
on
there to suicide bombing.
Wait a
They
minute,
were
what are you
not
talking
there
about?
in order to
when
bomb.
somebody
terrorism.
wages a war, Mr. Speaker, he knows that in his own soldiers are going to kill innocent civilians. That is called collateral damage, Mr. Speaker.
That's not collateral damage.
Then what
Collateral
is-
damage is unintentional. If these soldiers ever kill a person, then that person becomes a criminal or a terrorist. But that is not the true goal of
So
why
you're
they-
calling the
Actually-
innocent civilians
No,
criminals?
I didn't call them
What were
You
criminals.
said soldiers,
Are you
it's
trying to-
people that soldiers
Excuse me,
kill.
Soldiers are not innocent.
are you trying to equate war
What
with
who they
terrorism?
kill are.
Are you trying to equate war with terrorism?
Yes, war is terrorism, magnified
Then-
100 times.
Then,
Hey, Mr. Speaker, may I ask a question to you? Do you believe in the U.S. judicial system?
Their judicial system.
Yes?
Well, I'm not the U.S. I'm not a U.S. citizen. So
But it is an established judicial system, is it not?
of course,
So tell me, why did Colonel Paul Tibbets, the one who dropped the little boy bomb on Hiroshima, was not put into court? Tell me why.
he took orders from a higher.
Hiroshima was at war.
Yeah.
This is terrorism, not war.
You said killing of innocent civilians. You said killing of non-combatants.
That is war. Again, collateral damage, rules of
Why
engagement.
did anybody call?
There are rules of engagement, of course. To win the war, you have to do that. But
Was it a rule to kill non-combatants, Mr. Speaker? There was no such rule.
exactly what I mean. There is no such rule to kill non-combatants. So if you're trying not to define, if you're trying to be subjective about freedom fighting and terrorism, then what do you call these groups?
The
when they
U.S.
kill
was
a
hailed
civilian?
as freedom fighters throughout the world.
But why? What would you call?
Then you
these
stated them
groups?
as terrorists.
What would you call these groups who kill a civilian? Who kill? He might. He could have killed a woman, a child. What do you call these people?
Okay, the U.S. killed millions of innocent
Then
children.
what do you call these people?
They were hailed as freedom fighters throughout the world.
But
What
you would call them terrorists based on
They
your
were
definition,
killed.
Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
Throughout the
They
world,
were
I don't
hailed.
believe that.
Throughout the world.
Really, I
Except
don't
Japan. Except Japan.
Of course, except Japan.
that's
They
not
were
the
hailed.
world.
So the whole world
Not
calls
just-
them freedom
not even-
fighters,
not just
but
Japan.
Japan calls them terrorists. Hence, one man's terrorist is another man's
They were
freedom
hailed, but is it
fighter.
right?
What?
They were hailed, but is it right? Yes or no?
They were hailed. Yes, that's right. That they were hailed freedom fighters. That's
They
the
were
whole-
hailed, but what they did, was it right? Yes or no?
No, it was not.
Tell
right,
me,
but nonetheless, they
tell
were
me,
hailed.
how many Japanese or Americans would have to be killed when they did not drop the atomic
Then
bomb?
you tell me how many civilians a Taliban has to
Okay,
kill to win.
thank you. Thank you very much. At this point, I'm sorry I have to cut you out. And the winner, okay, ladies and gentlemen, people of Negros and Bacolod City, our winner, Negative Side, University of St. Salle.